Hello and welcome to Pockenrop. In today's video I am continuing my series called ReImagined. In this series I've had a go at condensing both Goodbye Yellow Brick Road and the White Album down to a single killer album. And I've also had a go at a couple of fantasy albums, Wings 8th and the Beatles' 13th album. In this one I'm going to return to a subject I've touched on several times in other videos, and that is Paul McCartney and Wings' second album, Rose Speedway. As you might know, the story of Rose Speedway is an odd one. Paul went into the studio with his new band on the back of a bit of a flop in Wildlife, and they recorded lots of material, and the intention was for Rose Speedway to be a double. The studio weren't happy with that, partly because Wildlife had been a flop, and maybe because they didn't think the material was good enough, I don't know. But in the end, Paul was asked to go back and condense it down to a single. Now, that single album, I don't rank particularly highly. It's in my bottom third if you go and watch my Paul McCartney album rankings video. But I did include the double in my ranking as well. A slightly controversial move, but I ranked the double so much better. It's my contention that the 9 tracks culled from the double contain some amazing material that would have seriously improved the original Rose Speedway. So there's a lot of tracks recorded around this time and considered for inclusion on the Rose Speedway album. So in contention, we have, to begin with, the original 9 tracks from the as released album. That's Big Barn Bed, My Love, Get on the Right Thing, One More Kiss, and Little Lamb Dragonfly from side 1. Then side 2, Single Pigeon, When the Night, Loop, The First Indian on the Moon, and the medley of 4 songs. Added to that, we've got the 9 tracks that are on this acetate double version. So that's The Mess and I Lie Around, both of which were used as B-sides in 1973. Night Out, which never came out until 2018. Country Dreamer, Seaside Woman, written by Linda. Best Friend, which is a live take from Antwerp. Mama's Little Girl. I Would Only Smile, written by Denny. And Tragedy. So those are the additional 9 tracks that we have on the double version. So on top of those, we have a whole wealth of other tracks to consider, which have been released on the 2018 remastered expanded edition. There's 1882, which is a live take, a bit like Best Friend. There is Thank You Darling. We also have the instrumental Jazz Street. And lastly, there is the single that was released in 1972 but came from these sessions, which is Hi Hi Hi, coupled with Sea Moon. So in total, I am putting 23 tracks under the microscope to consider whether or not I can get a killer album out of it. Now, one final thing to mention is Live and Let Die. Now, Live and Let Die is a phenomenal song. I have not included it, despite the fact that it was recorded in these sessions under consideration for this album. Not because I don't think it was worthy of making it. It most definitely would be, and quite possibly would be the strongest track on the whole album. But because this was a commission, this was specifically for the Live and Let Die film, and as a result, I think it sets apart from the rest of the Rose Speedway sessions. So 23 tracks under consideration, and we're going to make a great album. Before I dive into what I've actually included on the album, then I'd just like to remind you, if you like the video, to hit the thumbs up. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, and even better, tell somebody about it and get them to subscribe too. And hit the bell to receive notifications of future content. So let's dive in. A link to my playlist is available in the description below to Spotify, but I'm kicking off the Rose Raceway album with Big Barn Bed. I like Big Barn Bed. I think it was a good opener on the original Rose Speedway. My problem with it is what followed it. Big Barn Bed suggests a good time is coming. This is then followed by the single My Love, which I don't hate, unlike many people, but tears the impetus out of the album. So instead of My Love, what I've followed up Big Barn Bed with is Get on the Right Thing. I think it keeps the impetus and the momentum that's been begun going further into the album. That's not to say that I think we need to keep it high octane all the way through, because the next track I placed after Get on the Right Thing is Tragedy. Now, Tragedy is a cover version of a song that was released in 1961, and I genuinely think this is amongst Paul's best ever cover versions. I love the sound of it. I love how it's played. I think this is one of the great lost Wings classics. I've followed Tragedy up with Country Dreamer, track 5 and closing off the album, and this boggles my mind that this was never actually in contention for the double 1882. This is a phenomenal track, recorded in 1972 and did not see the light of day and any release in any format for 46 years. 1882 is a great blues track. I think it shows off Henry McCulloch's guitar playing to its best. And it boggles my mind he didn't include it. He wasn't even in contention. It's a great, for me, side 1 closer. Now, kicking off side 2, I wrangled about whether to include this track or not for a while, and it's Hi, Hi, Hi. I'm not its biggest fan, but I think if it's on Red Rose Speedway, it bolsters the credentials of the album as a proper rock and roll band album. Hi, Hi, Hi is a good song, and I think it would have been a good opening track on side 2 of the record. Following on from that, and would show that Wings were more of a band and not a solo vehicle for Paul, I Would Only Smile. I think I Would Only Smile is a terrific track, and I know it eventually got released as the recorded session from Red Rose Speedway on Denny's solo album Japanese Tears. But this is a great band performance. It's a great Denny song, and I find it a shame it was culled for the original Red Rose Speedway. Following on from I Would Only Smile is One More Kiss. I have said that I really rather enjoy this track, and I think I said that it was probably my favourite not from the Ram Sessions tracks on Red Rose Speedway. Followed closely by When the Night, which I think I placed at number 4 on my rank list of Red Rose Speedway. Penultimate track on the record for me would be Mama's Little Girl. Now, this was eventually released in 1990 as a bonus track on the 12-inch of Put It There from the Flowers in the Dirt album. And on hearing it, you wonder, why was this shelved for so long? This is a gorgeous acoustic track, and it's one of my all-time favourite Wings pieces. And to have been buried and held back for so long is astonishing. Mama's Little Girl, penultimate track, and I'm closing the album as the double closes with the beautiful best track on Red Rose Speedway, Little Lamb Dragonfly. That gives me approximately a 44-minute album, and for me, near perfect, almost band on the run quality, certainly on a par, I think, with Ram. So to conclude, just a couple of words about some of the tracks that I didn't include. There's a couple of things I really detest from this period. Loop being the prime offender. I'm delighted that my version does not contain that assault on the eardrums. No Space for Sea Moon. I know some people really like this track, but I thoroughly detest it. Jazz Street is just perfectly fine, but there's so much better stuff. Night Out is enjoyable and would have opened the double Red Rose Speedway, but I much prefer a later version I've heard from the Cold Cuts project that actually adds proper lyrics. And I really debated over Single Pigeon. I really like that song, but I just think there was some stronger material there. If I was forced not to include Hi, 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 Single Pigeon would probably take its place. And finally, the elephant in the room, My Love. How could I leave out a #1 smash hit American single on an album like Rose Speedway? And my answer is, I don't hate My Love. I just don't think it fits with the idea that I've generated of Red Rose Raceway. I would probably look at releasing My Love as it was as a single, but standalone and separate from the Red Rose Speedway album. So My Love as a standalone single alongside the release of Red Rose Speedway would have still given him his hit, but a better album and a much more enjoyable experience. So that's my version, Red Rose Raceway. The wealth of material is such that if you were to give these 23 tracks to any McCartney fan, we would all end up with a completely different version that we think is absolutely perfect. This is mine. Let me know in the comments below what yours might be. You're not allowed to include Live and Let Die for the reasons that I gave during the video, but I'm intrigued to see what your 44-minute album might be. Just remains to remind you to like the video, hit the subscribe and hit the bell, and I'll see you next time.